Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy Studio today. And I am super excited to have Sean Casey on today. He actually works for another pharmacy, and he's going to talking about nutritional supplementation for athletes. We talk about supplements quite often. We talk about athletes quite often. And a few months back, we had a show on how all of us should actually treat our bodies like an athlete. So even if you're not an athlete, this is going to be pertinent to you today. So without further ado, Sean, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it and the opportunity to brainstorm and discuss good things as it relates to health, wellness, and athletic performance.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your history. Introduce yourself and tell us how you got into this subject matter.
All right. So my background is I went to school, University of Wisconsin. I got a degree in dietetics as well as kinesiology with exercise physiology. And it was actually kind of interesting. When I went to school, I was going for sports medicine. I was thinking being like a physical therapist. And then I job shadowed over the summer with a physical therapy. And I realized the only time I enjoyed it was when an athlete got hurt. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm excited because an athlete is hurt. If this is not the most backwards idea you've had. So that's when I decided to kind of get on the front side of that injury with kind of more the proactive standpoint. And I made the goals of I want to be the youngest strength conditioning coach in the NFL, as well as attend the Olympics to watch athletes I work with compete. And I realized that's a competitive thing. So that's when I added the dietetics degree to it. And I was fortunate to have some good experiences right out of the gate. Kind of was able to hit the check mark box with the Olympians. So I've been very fortunate. But how I actually got into the supplement side of things was I enjoy biochemistry. And when I was working with a lot of clients, found that, you know, as much as I love taking like 5 different ingredients and kind of mad scientists putting them together, I found not too many athletes enjoyed that. And so I was trying to find easier way to make solutions with blended powders with efficacious doses. So that's how I kind of looped into the supplement world. And then I was fortunate to connect with a hometown pharmacy here in Wisconsin with a lot of collaborations.
Yeah. So your dietitian degree, is it traditional dietitian? Is that the schooling you went to?
Yep. It was a traditional dietitian school. What I can tell you is by traditional dietitian standards, I'm a little bit more on the different end with respect to, some of the things with, recommendations. I try to be really progressive in that regards.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that, Sean, is because we've had quite a few dietitians on our podcast, and a lot of them have become coaches or personal trainers. Mm-hmm. And what they learned traditionally, some of them even actually got out of the traditional dietitian world because of how the traditional dietitian was recommending to cardiovascular patients and diabetics wasn't really the best, most sound education.
Yeah. What I can kind of, to build off that, I remember when I was going through my dietetic rotations, doing my diabetes unit, at that time they were still allowing, 5 carb choices per meal, which was about 75 grams of carbs 3 times a day along with 1 to 2 carb choices as snacks. So, I mean, I think at the one point you could have had like 275 grams of carbs as a type 2 diabetic, which I have athletes who don't even have that amount.
I was going to say,
that's a lot.
The only time I'll have that many carbs is on a day when I ride my bike in a race for 5 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of carbs.
Yes. So it was a lot. So I definitely branched a different way. That was, recommendations I was not comfortable with sharing with other, with diabetes, but no. So like I said, more progressive and kind of just went a different direction. Again, kind of doing the best kind of reverse disease processes or prevent them from ever happening.
Yeah. So tell us about athletes, supplementation and athletes. Let's get into the nitty gritty of that.
No. So I love looking at ways to maximize human performance. When you can kind of squeeze out an extra 4 or 5% is pretty neat. But it's always interesting when people come looking for supplements, looking at be it the fanciest pre-workouts or all these type of things. Before I dive into those higher apples, I just start looking at basic nutrients. I think it can sometimes be lost of like, hey, vitamin D is really important. Yeah. Magnesium, really important. They're not really sexy on a label, but they're pretty critical for performance.
And really, when I think about the vitamin D, that's, and I think I kind of alluded to this a little bit in our discussion today when I introduced it, is that, vitamin D is just a base for everybody, whether athlete or not. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just need plenty of vitamin D and magnesium. Mm-hmm. So, and athletes might, need a few more things, but in general, this is going to really actually pertain to every individual.
No, that's correct. The one thing that we always have is like a foundational 6 I'm always looking at. And these are 6 nutrients ideally we'd be getting from food, but, due to modern lifestyle, things can be really challenging. And for me, those baselines are always, an omega-3, magnesium, a multivitamin, vitamin D. One that always surprised people, even just for general health, but creatine. When you look at the brain health benefits, creatine are pretty fascinating. So those, and then, it's always good to get fiber, preferably from food. But those are always kind of my bases I want to make sure that people have in place before we start looking at more targeted ones.
So let's talk about creatine a little bit. I would have never thought of it for brain health, honestly. So educate me. And why, I think when we think of creatine, I think of it for, more for athletic performance, but you're saying that it should be a foundational nutrient.
Foundational nutrient.
Tell me about it.
So some really kind of fascinating stuff. So again, people think about creatine in terms of muscle power, things of that nature. But I always tell people creatine is nothing more than the electrician of your body. It supplies energies in your cells. So yes, obviously our muscles need energy, but our brain also needs a lot of energy too. There's been some neat research with creatine showing that, especially if you get low amount from your diet, but creatine's been able to show, like if you have to think really quick on the spot, to improve that ability. It's also been shown, don't quote me on this, but I think there's 6 published studies now showing creatine improves symptoms of mood. So if you're adding it on to traditional, medications have been shown to enhance that effect. And then the other one with creatine as it relates to brain health is there's been studies, and this was actually done in adolescents, where if there's a traumatic brain injury, if you use high dose creatine afterwards, the symptoms were less severe and they resolved much quicker. That was kind of a neat study back in 2008 out of a place out of Canada center. So I always think like, okay, the other neat thing, this is more body wise, but creatine's also been shown to lower A1C levels by 1.2%. So again, so that's where I always go back to. It's, be it if you're a young person, active, risk of concussion, or let's say if you're an elderly person, we're starting to lose muscle mass. You always have the fall of, tripping, hitting your head, as much armor as we can put on the body, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of muscle mass, my guess is, creatine to increase lean body mass is one of the ways it helps to burn glucose and lower hemoglobin A1C. That's kind of my thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It kind of on more of a nerdy level. It's been shown to increase like GLUT4 transporters to the muscle cell just with how it kind of burns through ATP and how it regenerates it. So that's the thing. If you can increase that engine, you can all of a sudden start using more glucose from your bloodstream.
So tell us what food sources are high in creatine.
The only food sources that are high in creatine is meat. So anyone who's following like a vegetarian or vegan diet is really going to struggle from getting it from meat. And I should say, even if you're, if you eat meat, you have to eat a lot of it. I think to get, what they're seeing in research to kind of support muscle is kind of that minimum of 3 to 5 grams if you're going for brain health. The brain health is not necessarily fully elucidated, but they're looking at roughly most of the studies I've been seeing are 10 grams or more. And so to get 5 grams of creatine, I think you need to eat about 3 to 4 pounds of meat per day.
So
If you're a
That's a lot of
hardcore
meat.
carnivore, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Hardcore. Sean Baker probably gets enough creatine in his diet. But other than that, yeah, 3 pounds of meat is a lot of meat. So tell us about supplementation then. Do you supplement with 5 to 10 grams a day, or and is it powder form, or how is that?
Yeah, I usually use powder form. The reason, one of the things I like about creatine just in general is working with a lot of people. I just find a lot of people don't like swallowing pills just in general. So that's always one of the things that makes creatine a little bit easier. It's in powder form. And so it's tasteless. So it's not like it's going to give an off taste to anything. So you can add it, say, into juice or into coffee or into a smoothie in the morning. But so usually 5 grams per day. If someone's going for more of the brain health benefits, closer to 10 grams per day.
And is it heat labile? So it's okay to put in hot coffee?
Some of the original research was actually done in coffee, which is always fascinating. So there's always kind of that discussion, is there potential any interaction between, say, coffee as well as creatine? The research is kind of mixed. If somebody's going to go play it real conservative, keep it in something cold, but I haven't seen enough research to make me think that it has a big effect if it's in like a hotter liquid.
Well, I mean, I think about it, if it's in meat sources, it's probably fairly stable is my guess.
Yeah.
So what about weight gaining creatine? I know that athletes sometimes gain weight when they take creatine is what I've heard. Can you tell us about that? Can you tell us about the average consumer? Should they be concerned, even if it is lean body mass? And, should we worry about the scale? Let's just go down that rabbit hole.
Definitely a rabbit hole it is. So with creatine, you are going to have a little bit of weight gain. I usually see, some people have very minimal, maybe, 2 to 3 pounds. If somebody's doing like a high loading dose right off the gate, there you might see, a quicker jump in terms of weight. But I find for most people, it kind of balances out anywhere from, 2 to 4 pounds. From there, the big thing, on the rabbit hole kind of you're going through is the scale, what we should be looking at versus, the lean body mass, which I'm well aware of. The only individuals where I don't do much creatine, because it does have that impact on weight gain, is if I'm working with an athlete who competes in a weight class restricted sport, be it, wrestling or something of that nature.
Yeah. So what about creatine and kidney function? I know years ago, creatine was kind of vilified for possibly hurting your kidneys. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So that was, kind of the original early concern with the effect of creatine. But, every study that's come out in, say, the last, 20 to 30 years has looked very favorable in terms of impacts on kidney health. That being said, if you have a pre-existing kidney condition, always, consult with the healthcare practitioner. But all the long-term studies that I've seen, including studies that are multiple years in length and very high doses, it's been very safe from a kidney function standpoint. The one thing you can get a little bit, and if you have your blood levels of creatinine measured, it can give a false positive, because creatine will break down into creatinine. So I literally named or mind blanked on the test, but there's another test that you should be running, to assess kidney function if you have those elevated levels of creatinine. But it's, I always tell people, it's kind of like if you're a type 2 diabetic, we know metformin decreases B12. And so, if you go with a high dose of B12, you're going to have slightly elevated levels. It's the same thing with creatine as well. There is that potential. But like I said, in terms of actual kidney function, very clean. It's interesting. I've actually seen a couple studies in dialysis patients where they had to add creatine back into their dialysis, and they actually had better improvements in terms of quality of life measures.
Interesting. I think the most important thing when it comes to, just overall health too, is hydration. I think in some of those early creatine studies, I think, maybe some of the patients were dehydrated. And I think also when you're talking about creatinine, also, as many athletes, if you check creatinine only, they're going to look like they have, I get it all the time. Anybody with a lot of lean body mass has a higher creatinine because creatinine comes from breakdown of muscle tissue.
Mhm.
So automatically you get a creatinine 1.4, 1.5, they think you're going into kidney failure. And you have to look at the overall picture of that
Mhm.
person in order to really assess that. And I forgot the name of that test. Sean Baker talked about the name of that kidney test, and I need to figure that one out. So if you find that, please shoot me a note. I'd love to know.
No, I can literally do it. It was one of those things where on the tip of my tongue, I went to say it, and like, boom, mind blank.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I have a twin brother who's a bodybuilder, and we were talking the same subject, and he drew a blank too. So, but yeah, I do want to know the name of that test because I think it assesses kidney function better than just creatinine alone.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's neat too because creatine has in so many different health conditions outside of the whole athletic realm, like so many benefits on it. So, but I could go on a soapbox on that forever, but I'd probably bore you.
Yeah. No, so what's the next supplement we want to talk about? Magnesium?
Yep, magnesium.
Okay.
Magnesium is a pretty cool one. It helps with energy production, so it's just part of the normal ATP cycle in that regards in terms of formation. The big thing that I think people miss with magnesium, just as it relates to overall athletic performance, is the benefits that magnesium has on both sleep as well as reducing anxiety. So I always think about overtraining syndrome in a lot of the high-level athletes I work with of running themselves into the ground. We know that if someone's high or stressed, if somebody is having trouble sleeping, that's going to greatly increase the risk of falling into that overtraining syndrome. And so those are, besides the normal muscle contraction, energy production, where I really love magnesium. And a lot of people, either A, they don't eat pumpkin seeds, or B, they don't eat a lot of dark leafy greens. So a lot of people are running around deficient in it.
And tell us about the different forms of magnesium. There's magnesium oxide, there's magnesium glycinate. Tell us about those.
All right. The other magnesium oxide, I always tell people, is like taking a bunch of rocks, throwing it at a wall, and expecting to see results. Really nice if you want to have a colon cleanse. Not so great if you actually want to absorb it into the body with there. So what we put a lot of emphasis on is like your magnesium glycinate. I like that form just because glycinate is glycine, which has some relaxing benefits on its own. And then, I've also used my magnesium malate with clients as well. Again, another form that's more highly absorbed than the oxide, which malate does play into the energy Krebs cycle. So those are usually the ones that I'm going with, along with getting from food first and then backing up with supplements.
Well, and one thing I think about magnesium, and you kind of hit on a little bit, it's like if your supplement, whether it be calcium, whether it be magnesium, or whether it be iron, is causing GI problems, either diarrhea or constipation, that means it's not being absorbed.
Yeah.
So that means you probably need a different form of it. So that's a good point on magnesium. If you want it to be absorbed, you need the good form of it, glycinate. And speaking of smooth muscle, did you talk about the smooth muscle relaxant properties of magnesium?
No, I didn't talk about, but that's another great feature of it. I always look at magnesium as, I always put like characters with all the supplements. I always look at magnesium as kind of like the therapist of your body that literally just relaxes everything. It relaxes your blood pressure. It relaxes, muscle cramps, restless legs, sleep. So those are all cool benefits.
And what's the next one? Vitamin D?
Vitamin D.
We could talk about vitamin D for 8 hours. I mean, I tell patients, I tell everyone, if there's only one supplement you pick to take, I think it should be vitamin D. Yeah. Everybody's deficient, especially in northern latitudes, and it's safe and it's inexpensive. So vitamin D is a hormone in itself. That's why it does so much. So now I'll let you talk about it.
No, vitamin D, I think you hit the nail on the head, has so many health benefits. Everything from muscle recovery to overall mental health and wellness, immune function. I think that's a critical one. And, it's interesting. We do a lot of vitamin D testing at our pharmacy. And I've worked with be it school districts, a lot of different things where we do testing with the entire thing. We had a district that we tested. This would have been August 29th, I want to say, was the date of this past year. And they also talk about, the sunshine hormone.
Yeah.
So we did a test with everyone. The average score on that was a 24 nanograms per milliliter. The highest anyone had was a 38. So I live in Wisconsin, to give everyone like a sense of breath, but I think it was a very surprising for the entire district to realize, like, hey, even though that some of them are already taking vitamin D, so, it's the summer months, so you're outside more, how low everyone was despite the environmental, being favorable for vitamin D levels.
Yeah, in the middle of summer. But here's one of the things. Northern latitudes.
Yep.
You're in northern latitudes, so the sun is not hitting us like it would at the equator. And I mean, sure, we're outside, but are we outside that much?
Yep.
And are we covered up? Most of the time we're wearing shirts, we're wearing sunscreen because we don't want to get skin cancer. That's a whole other story. But most of the time we're covered up and we're protecting ourselves from the sun to prevent sunburn. So that stops the production of vitamin D in our skin when we do that. So, and when people are taking vitamin D, and I'll let you hit on this a little bit, they take it in their multivitamin, or they take 1,000 units a day. And tell us what the dose really should be, Shawn.
Gosh, I think for most people, you should be at a minimum of 5,000 IUs based off what I've seen. We do a lot of 10,000, IUs as well. And, and the other point, kind of building off what you were saying in terms of just the sunlight is, I always tell people, if you're inside from, even during the summer months, if you're sitting in a room from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if you're outside walking at 7 a.m. in the morning or 7 p.m. at night, you're not going to get those strong rays even during the summer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because what is it? 10 to 2 is when the sun's rays are the strongest. And most of us are inside then.
Yeah.
Especially during the week. So yeah, my thought on vitamin D is most patients, I'm about the same latitude you guys are, and most of our patients will do better between 5 and 10,000 units a day. There's also a 50,000 unit vitamin D that you can take once a week. That will give you about 7,200 units a day, which is perfect. Vitamin D does not have to be taken every day because it is fat soluble and has a half-life of 19 days. So you can actually take it once a week or even less at the right dose.
No, that's an excellent one. And again, that's one that's hard to get from food. I always tell people, I think you'd have to eat like 14 cups of white mushrooms a day, or 3 gallons of fortified milk a day. It's another one that's really hard to get from food alone.
Right. Well, and what I learned in pharmacy school was, vitamin D is a dangerous hormone because it's fat soluble. You got to be careful about overdosing, and 400 units was what was recommended. And that's why you'll see most multivitamins will have 400 units a day of vitamin D. And that's just, that's just a waste. It's almost like, why do they put anything in there? Vitamin D is something you usually have to supplement with separately in a separate supplement because you need so much of it.
I know. When I look at a multivitamin, I see the vitamin D dose. I have the mental image of taking a bottle of water, dumping it into the ocean, and expecting to see the water level rise.
Right. That's a really good point. Yeah, it's like spitting in the wind. It's nothing. And I think it's important for us to tell our patients that too. Yeah. And with vitamin D supplementation, because I'll see a lot of patients and their vitamin D is like you say 38 or something, which is not optimal. It's in the normal range, but not optimal. And you ask how much vitamin D they're taking, and they take 1,000 units a day, and it's almost like it's just like almost taking nothing. I mean, so if you do have those capsules that are 1,000 units a day, take 5 of them, and then when those are gone, get a supplement that's 5,000 units a day.
No, that's always a good one. So we hit, let me think, magnesium, the vitamin D.
What about omega-3?
Omega-3s, yep. Omega-3s, again, almost everyone is deficient in omega-3s. I don't have too many clients that eat anchovy pizza 4 nights a week, so usually we have to go a supplemental form there. Yeah. I always look at omega-3s as kind of like the firefighters of your body. They help you control inflammation in the body, and we know that if we're highly inflamed, that's going to not only slow down muscle recovery, but have negative impacts on eye health, brain health, and just the entire gamut of, health and wellness.
I like that analogy of the firefighters at omega-3s, and that's That's kind of what they are. They just kind of put out the fires from all the inflammation that we're bombarded with every day.
Mm-hmm. No. And the neat thing on omega-3s is that's if you know someone's baseline levels. We do a lot of omega-3 index testing at our pharmacy. So that's a one where if you know someone's level, it's easy to kind of dose up into the higher range. And the one study that always will stick out in my mind as it relates to omega-3s just for health was there was a study that came out in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, June of 21, showing that if your levels are less than 4.2%, which almost everyone's will be if you're not supplementing, it was as predictive of mortality as what being a current smoker is.
Wow.
So that was, again, correlation doesn't always equal causation. But that being said, that was a pretty powerful result when I read it.
Well, and it's pretty easy to take a omega-3 supplement, so why not?
Yeah.
Speaking of omega-3 supplements, are they all created the same? Omega-3 is also known as fish oil.
Yep.
Are they all created the same?
No, that'd be great if they were. You can see omega-3s in a couple different forms. One is the ethyl ester form. The other is the resterified triglyceride form. All the research that I've seen has seemed to indicate that getting the triglyceride form is the optimal for absorption for the body. The other thing I always tell people with omega-3s is if you're going to be spending a little bit extra on a supplement to ensure quality, I mean, obviously we want quality for everything, but one to really be conscious of is omega-3s, simply because of heavy metals. Make sure it's properly distilled. The other thing I always look at is you want to make sure that what you're consuming. So with being oil, omega-3, it can go rancid. So that's the idea of having smelly fish, type thing. It's really important that you're getting it from a quality source where you can ensure it hasn't went rancid or been out in a lot of sunlight or things of that nature.
Well, and this is what I'll tell my patients, especially with omega-3s, you get what you pay for. And if it smells like fish or tastes like fish, it's rancid, it's rotten,
Yeah.
It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, the triglyceride backbone is the best absorbed, and it's important. It's harder to manufacture. That's why it's a little bit more expensive. But from what I understand too, the triglyceride backbone is the more natural form, how it's found in the wild, but it makes it harder to manufacture and keep it stable. So the best supplements will have the triglyceride or backbone.
No, it's like they always say when it comes to cost as it relates to supplements, the most expensive supplement is the supplement that doesn't work for you. And that's where it goes to like, hey, if you buy good quality, that is worth 100 times more than the $2 one that you bought that doesn't do anything for you.
Right, exactly. So what are we missing? What are the foundation supplements we missing?
Yep. So we get a multivitamin. I do a multivitamin just because it covers nutritional basis, a quality one. It can be hard to get everything from a diet alone. Again, I'm a dietitian. I always go with the food first approach. We believe food is medicine. But my diet isn't always perfect. Don't tell anyone, it'll kill my street cred with dietitians, but it's not always perfect. So that's one I'll put emphasis on as well. The other one I didn't mention, it's not necessarily part of the foundational 6, but the one that's like the right on the border that in almost all my protocols I use with people is taurine powder. Are you familiar with taurine?
A little bit. I know about taurine, about skin health and brain health, because taurine kind of works to protect the cardiovascular system too, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of cool benefits with taurine. It's been shown to kind of upregulate antioxidant production in one's body. So you kind of stimulate your own antioxidant systems with taurine. From an outcome standpoint, it's been shown to speed up muscle recovery post physical exercise. On more of the health level, it's been shown to reduce blood pressure in amounts as low as like 1.5 grams a day. It's also been shown to help with blood sugar levels. And again, I always think about brain health. Like your brain is something I always want to be as sharp as possible. There's been some research in terms of like traumatic brain injury showing that taurine use helps to reduce inflammation, speed up recovery. Probably a couple of other things I love about it is just the fact it's a tasteless powder that dissolves instantly, and like an effective dose is like only costs like 17, 18 cents a day. It's kind of in that 3 to 4 gram dose. So I always think like, man, I usually lose more money than that out of my coat pocket holes than
Yeah.
it's like that's an easy one to add on that doesn't necessarily, kill the wallet too bad.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back on multivitamin quickly. Tell us about USRDA minimum requirements and what you actually recommend.
Oh, that's a great point. I usually recommend significantly more than the RDA levels, especially if you. I was tell people, I think most people are surprised. So if you have your supplement bottle, you have the nutrition facts panel on it, and you see something that says like 2,000% of the daily value or 3,000 or whatever it is. Those can be intimidating if you don't know better. It's like, oh my gosh, is this toxic at these levels? I don't think most people realize is that the daily values were based off the 1968 RDAs. So in terms of that, it hasn't changed in the past, 55 years in terms of what that percentage is based on. So although the RDAs have changed since that original time period, the actual daily value that those numbers are based on has not been updated.
Yeah, and those numbers, if you look back into it, we could have a whole podcast on that. But when those numbers were originally made up, the USRDA originally made up post World War II, it was on how much of a nutrient it took to prevent a disease, i.e. scurvy. So the USRDA of vitamin C is 60 milligrams. And what they would do is they would deplete people of post-war veterans, World War II veterans. They would deplete them of vitamin C until they got scurvy, and then they would replete them with a certain amount until 50% of their scurvy symptoms went away, and that was the USRDA, 60 milligrams. Well, I don't know about you, but I won't want a chance of 50% of myself getting scurvy. So, the numbers are way, way conservative and way low, and they're also based on when our foods were grown in different environments, that the mineral content and the vitamin content of our soil was different. So
no, and that's those are key points that I think can easily get missed. Our food supply isn't what it used to be back then.
So as we wrap this podcast up, Shawn, I want to have you on again because I heard you guys your guys' pharmacy makes up custom supplements. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's almost like when you talk about compounding pharmacies, we're actually focused on compounding essential vitamin nutrient supplements specific, to an individual's body. So our whole goal is to dial things as much as possible. It's kind of like if you look at a multivitamin, I always figure probably 33% of the ingredients are close to what I need. 33% is probably more than what I need. 33% is probably less than what I need.
Right.
So again, and we just hate taking pills, Yeah. And so that is one of the neat things that we're able to do with our pharmacy. And we're looking to, support people. Again, our goal as a pharmacy is to get people off of medications or prevent them from ever needing them in the first place.
Absolutely. I love it. And as pharmacists, my wife and I speak about that. And it's a very powerful thing to have pharmacists that say they don't want people to take medications long term. So that's a very powerful statement. So Shawn, what do you have a passion for?
My passion is just helping people thrive in life. I get excited. I always jokingly tell people, like, I feel like I have jet fuel in my veins most days, like just the race to get out of bed. I'm personally passionate. I love working out myself. That's kind of my passion is more of a weightlifter than endurance athlete. But I love doing that type of stuff and just passionate about helping people get healthy, achieve performance. I've been very blessed and fortunate to have many good experiences in life in that regards.
I love it. So we're going to go ahead and stream your pharmacy's website. And if anybody has any questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Questions is people are always able to, through our website, connect me. Probably the best way is on Facebook. I'm really active. It's just Shawn Casey. My Instagram handle is stcasey34 or stcasey 34 on there. So please reach out. I love conversation. I'm active in the Sport Pharmacy Facebook group. So yeah, love to talk more.
I love it, Shawn. So one thing I noticed on your guys' pharmacy website, it talks about educate and empower.
Yep.
And I will tell you that the goal of our podcast is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. And I think you've helped us realize that goal today, Shawn. So thank you so much.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, let's stay in touch.
All right, bye now.
Listeners and viewers of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, tune in Thursday for our midweek podcast at 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will have Jason Goodman on. He is a personal trainer and has some different ways, unique ways on how to help you work your way to health and lose weight. So tune in, Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you for listening and watching.